You really thought you belonged here? Rachel Harrison's voice cut through the ballroom like a knife. A girl from the gutter, pretending to be one of us? Magnolia stood frozen on the stage, 200 pairs of eyes burning into her skin. I am Lucas's wife. I have every right to be here. Wife? Rachel laughed, holding up a document. Not anymore. Sign this divorce paper. Now. In front of everyone. I won't. I haven't done anything wrong. Rachel's hand moved fast. Champagne splashed across Magnolia's face, dripping down her dress. The crowd gasped, then someone snickered. Then another. Throw her out, Rachel commanded. She's embarrassing herself. Security grabbed Magnolia's arms. She searched desperately for Lucas, but her husband looked away, unable to meet her eyes. As they dragged her toward the door, she didn't know that this was the last night she would ever be powerless. But what Rachel didn't know was that the woman she just humiliated wasn't a nobody. She was the lost heir to a billion-dollar empire. And revenge? It was coming. Subscribe now and stay until the end to see how Magnolia destroys everyone who betrayed her. 3 years earlier, Magnolia had believed in fairy tales. She had grown up in St. Catherine's Home for Children, a gray building on the outskirts of Baltimore where dreams went to die. No parents, no family, no last name until the state assigned her one. The other children had called her No-Name Maggie until she turned 18 and aged out of the system with nothing but a high school diploma and a single piece of jewelry she'd worn since before memory began. The necklace was old, a thin gold chain holding a small pendant, a half-moon with a tiny diamond embedded in its curve. The orphanage director had told her it was found around her neck when she arrived as an infant. Probably fake, the woman had said, but it's yours. Magnolia never took it off. Not when she worked double shifts at the diner, not when she put herself through community college, not when she met Lucas Harrison at a charity gala where she was serving champagne and he was pretending to care about underprivileged youth. Lucas had been different then, or so she thought. He had looked at her, really looked at her, when she accidentally spilled sparkling water on his sleeve. Instead of anger, his eyes had held curiosity, then fascination, then something that felt dangerously close to love. I don't care about your background, he had whispered on their third date, his fingers tracing the pendant at her throat. I care about you. She had believed him. The Harrisons were old money. Plantation money, some whispered, though the family had long since scrubbed their history clean with philanthropy and political donations. They owned half of downtown Baltimore, had a summer estate in the Hamptons, and counted senators among their dinner guests. Rachel Harrison, Lucas's mother, had taken one look at Magnolia and seen everything she despised. Dark skin, no pedigree, no connections, no power. A charity case her son had dragged home like a stray dog. This will pass, Rachel had told her husband Richard on the night Lucas announced his engagement. He's rebelling. He'll tire of her. But Lucas hadn't tired. He had married Magnolia in a small ceremony that his family boycotted. For 6 months they were happy, deliriously, impossibly happy. Then reality crept in. The comments started small. Rachel accidentally setting only 7 places at family dinners when 8 people were present. Richard asking if Magnolia could perhaps enter through the service door at their annual gala. Lucas's sister Catherine laughing about the help within earshot. Magnolia endured it all because Lucas defended her. At first. They'll come around, he would say, holding her at night. Just give them time. But time revealed the truth about Lucas Harrison. He was a man built of good intentions and weak bones. Every confrontation with his mother chipped away at him. Every threat to cut off his trust fund made him flinch. Every whisper about his poor judgment in marriage drove him further into silence. By their 2nd anniversary, Lucas had stopped defending her. By their 3rd, he had stopped looking at her altogether. Magnolia watched her husband transform from a man who promised to protect her into a stranger who couldn't meet her eyes. She told herself he was stressed. The family business was struggling. She'd overheard enough hushed phone calls to know that much. Harrison Holdings was bleeding money, though they maintained their lavish lifestyle like nothing was wrong. She didn't know the half of it. What Magnolia didn't know was that her marriage hadn't been a love story at all. It had been a transaction, a carefully orchestrated plan that began long before Lucas spilled water on her at that charity gala. She didn't know that Rachel Harrison had specifically chosen her, an orphan with no family, no connections, no one who would ask questions. She didn't know that documents bearing her forged signature were buried in Harrison Holdings' financial records, making her legally liable for crimes she'd never committed. And she certainly didn't know that somewhere across the city, a dying billionaire had been searching for her for 28 years, guided only by the memory of a half-moon pendant he had clasped around his daughter's neck the night she was stolen from him. All Magnolia knew, as Christmas Eve arrived and Lucas told her to wear her best dress for the family's annual party, was that something was wrong. She touched the pendant at her throat, her only anchor, her only history, and tried to ignore the feeling that tonight, everything was about to change. She had no idea how right she was. The Harrison Christmas party had ended 3 hours ago, but Magnolia could still feel the champagne burning on her skin. She sat on a bench in Patterson Park, her designer dress, the one Lucas had bought her for tonight, the one she now realized was meant to be her costume for her own execution, soaked through with melted snow. Her face was numb. Her hands were shaking. The divorce papers she'd been forced to sign were probably already filed, the ink not yet dry on her signature. Rachel's voice echoed in her mind. "You were never anything but a placeholder, a convenient nobody." The crowd had laughed. Lucas had looked away. Security had dragged her out like garbage while Baltimore's elite raised their glasses in celebration. She had nothing. No money. Lucas controlled their joint accounts. No home. The apartment was in his name. No family to call, no friends who weren't really his friends first. She was exactly what Rachel had always said she was. A nobody from nowhere, with nothing. Her fingers found the pendant at her throat, the half-moon with its tiny diamond, her only possession, her only proof that she had ever existed before the orphanage, before the charity gala, before Lucas Harrison decided to make her his wife. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't answer. What was the point? But something made her look at the screen. Unknown number. At 11:47 on Christmas Eve. "Hello?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Miss Magnolia?" A man's voice, deep, formal. "My name is Mohis Webb. I've been looking for you for a very long time." She almost laughed. A telemarketer. On Christmas Eve, while she sat freezing to death in a public park. "I think you have the wrong number." "The pendant you're wearing," the man continued as if she hadn't spoken. "A half-moon with a diamond chip, gold chain, slightly tarnished. You've had it since you were an infant." Magnolia's blood went cold. She looked around the empty park, suddenly afraid. "How do you know about that?" "Because I was there the night it was placed around your neck." Mohis Webb's voice softened. 28 years ago, your father put that necklace on you himself, and he has been searching for you ever since. 2 days after Christmas, Magnolia stood outside a mansion in Guilford that made the Harrison estate look like a guest house. Mohis Webb had sent a car, a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who spoke only to confirm the address. During the 40-minute drive, Magnolia had tried to convince herself this was a scam, a cruel joke, another way the universe was punishing her for daring to want more than she deserved. But then the gates opened, and she saw the house, and she knew. This was real. Mohis met her at the door. He was tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man who had spent decades in service to someone powerful. His eyes were kind, but tired. He's been awake since midnight, Mohis said, waiting for you. The bedroom was on the second floor. Medical equipment lined the walls, monitors, IV stands, oxygen tanks. And in the center of it all, propped up on silk pillows in a bed that could have fit 10 people, was a man who looked like he was fighting death with every breath. Elijah Crown. Magnolia had researched him during the drive. Founder of Crown Industries, one of the wealthiest black men in America. Philanthropist, visionary, and, according to a single newspaper article from 28 years ago, the victim of a kidnapping that had taken his infant daughter. The police never found the child. The case went cold. Elijah Crown had never spoken publicly about it again. Now he was looking at her with eyes that held 28 years of grief. "Come closer," he said. His voice was thin, ravaged by illness, but it carried an authority that made her obey without thinking. She approached the bed. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched the pendant at her throat. His fingers traced the half moon, the tiny diamond, and when he looked up at her again, tears were streaming down his hollow cheeks. "I put this on you myself," he whispered, "the night before they took you. Your mother had just passed from complications of childbirth, and I was so afraid of losing you too. I thought if you wore something of mine, something blessed, it would protect you." A sound escaped him that was half laugh, half sob. "I was a fool." Magnolia didn't know what to say. All her life she had imagined this moment, meeting someone who knew where she came from. But she had never imagined it would feel like this, like grief and joy and terror all at once. "Who took me?" she finally asked. Elijah's expression hardened. "A man named Gerald Ashworth, my business partner, my closest friend." The words came out bitter, poisoned by decades of hatred. "He wanted control of the company. I wouldn't give it. So he took the one thing that mattered more to me than any of it." "Why didn't he kill me?" "Because Gerald was a coward. He couldn't do it himself, so he had his people abandon you at an orphanage across the country. He thought that was enough, that I would never find you." Elijah's hand found hers and gripped it with surprising strength. "He died 8 years ago, heart attack. Never faced justice for what he did, but his legacy, the people he worked with, the companies he corrupted, that's still out there, including the family that married you." Magnolia felt her stomach drop. The Harrisons? They knew Gerald Ashworth? Gerald was Rachel Harrison's uncle. Elijah watched her face as the truth sank in. "He introduced them to my investment fund years ago. He's the reason they owe me $47 million. And when he died, Rachel inherited more than just his debts. She inherited his secrets." They talked for hours. Elijah told her about her mother, a woman named Rose who had been brilliant, kind, and gone too soon. He told her about the years of searching, the private investigators, the false leads, the hope that slowly curdled into despair. He told her that he had cancer now, stage 4, and that the doctors had given him weeks at most. "I didn't want to find you like this," he said. "Dying, useless. But Mohis saw the video from that party, and he recognized the necklace, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer." Magnolia thought about the Harrison Christmas party, the humiliation, the champagne on her face, the divorce papers. "Rachel knew who I was?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't think so. Gerald kept that secret close." Elijah shook his head slowly. "But she knew you were an orphan with no connections. She knew you were the perfect scapegoat, and that's all she needed to know." He gestured to Mohis, who handed him a tablet. "They owe my investment fund $47 million. They've been restructuring the debt for years, hiding it behind shell companies and false projections. They're months away from complete collapse." The numbers on the screen meant nothing to Magnolia, but the implication did. "They're broke? Worse than broke. They're criminals." Elijah swiped through documents. "Fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, and your marriage to their son was not an accident. They needed someone without connections, someone who wouldn't ask questions, someone whose signature could be forged on documents without anyone noticing. He looked at her with something like pity. You weren't Lucas Harrison's wife. You were their scapegoat. When the authorities finally catch up to them, you would have taken the fall. Magnolia felt sick. All those forms Lucas had asked her to sign over the years, bank documents, property transfers, investment agreements. She had trusted him. She had trusted all of them. Did Lucas know? The fraud? Some of it. Enough to be complicit. Though he never signed anything himself. Rachel made sure of that. She protected her son while setting you up to take the blame. Elijah's expression was unreadable. But the kidnapping, your identity, no. Lucas doesn't know any of that. He's guilty of cowardice and willful ignorance, not conspiracy. She thought about Lucas's face at the party, the way he couldn't meet her eyes, the crack in his voice when he told her to sign. He had looked like a man in pain, but he had still handed her the pen. I want them to pay, Magnolia said. The words surprised her. She had never been vengeful. She had spent her whole life trying to be kind, to be patient, to be worthy of love. And where had it gotten her? Elijah smiled. It was a thin, tired smile, but it held a spark of pride. Then you'll need to become someone they would never expect, someone they would never recognize. He squeezed her hand. Can you do that? I don't know how. You'll learn. He nodded to Mohis. You have 3 weeks. My lawyers will handle the paperwork for the inheritance. But the Harrisons, that's your battle to fight. 3 weeks later, a woman named Mia Laurent walked into the Chesapeake Investment Summit. She wore a charcoal Valentino suit. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her makeup was minimal but flawless, the kind that required an hour to look like it took 5 minutes. Diamond studs in her ears. A confident stride in 4-inch Louboutins, no necklace. The half-moon pendant was hidden beneath her blouse, pressed against her heart. No one looked twice at her face. Why would they? Magnolia Harrison had been invisible her entire marriage, a shadow trailing behind her husband, a footnote in family photographs. The only thing anyone remembered about her was her skin color and her nothing background. Mia Laurent was different. Mia Laurent commanded attention simply by existing. Miss Laurent? A young assistant hurried toward her. Rachel Harrison asked me to escort you to her table. Magnolia smiled. 3 weeks ago, she would have been terrified. But 3 weeks with Mohis, learning how to carry herself, how to command a room, how to negotiate, had changed something fundamental inside her. She wasn't pretending to be powerful. She had simply remembered that she had always been powerful. The Harrisons had just made her forget. Rachel was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by executives who laughed at her jokes and nodded at her opinions. She looked exactly the same as she had at the Christmas party, immaculate, cold, poisonous. But there was something different in her eyes now, a desperation that hadn't been there before. Harrison Holdings was dying, and Rachel knew it. Miss Laurent. Rachel rose to greet her, all smiles. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Your reputation precedes you. The reputation was fabricated, of course. Mohis had spent the past 2 weeks planting stories in financial journals, creating a paper trail for an investor who didn't exist. Mia Laurent was supposedly based in Geneva, connected to European old money, and, most importantly, looking for distressed American assets to acquire. Harrison Holdings was the most distressed asset in Maryland. Mrs. Harrison. Magnolia shook her hand. Cool, professional, not a trace of recognition. I've reviewed your proposal. Interesting situation you found yourself in. They talked for an hour. Rachel pitched hard, too hard, with too much polish and not enough substance. The numbers didn't add up. The projections were fantasies. But Magnolia pretended to be convinced because she needed Rachel to trust her. At the end of the meeting, Rachel leaned in with the confidential air of someone sharing a secret. I have to be honest with you, Miss Laurent. We've had some turbulence recently. My son's divorced from an unsuitable woman. You understand? Magnolia's smile didn't waver. Of course, these things happen. She was a gold digger. Married him for his money, contributed nothing to the family. We're well rid of her. Under the table, Magnolia's hands curled into fists, but her voice remained steady. How fortunate for your son that he escaped. Very fortunate. Rachel's eyes glittered. Now about that investment. That night, Mohis found Magnolia standing in her father's study, staring at a photograph of her mother. You did well today, he said. I wanted to kill her. The words came out flat, emotionless. I sat across from that woman and smiled while she called me a gold digger, while she congratulated herself for destroying my life. Mohis was quiet for a moment. Your father says revenge is a dish best served cold, but I think it's also a dish that tastes better when your enemies serve it to themselves. Magnolia turned to look at him. What do you mean? The documents you signed during your marriage, the fraudulent ones. He handed her a folder. Our lawyers found them. Harrison Holdings has been using your forged signature for years, but they made a mistake. Several of the documents were notarized after your wedding date, and you were out of the country on 2 of those occasions. Your passport proves it. She opened the folder. Bank statements, property deeds, investment contracts. All with her signature, all with notarization dates that proved she couldn't have signed them. This is enough to destroy them, she said slowly. More than enough. But if you release this now, they'll claim ignorance. They'll blame subordinates, hire lawyers, drag it out for years. Mohis took back the folder. Your father suggests a different approach. Let Rachel bring you into the company first. Let her think she's using you, and when she's at her most vulnerable, at the shareholders' meeting next month, you reveal everything, in public, in front of the cameras. It was cruel. It was calculated. It was exactly what Rachel Harrison deserved. But before Magnolia could respond, her phone rang. It was the hospital. Her father's condition had deteriorated. The doctors were saying days now, not weeks. She ran. Elijah was conscious when she arrived, but barely. His skin had gone gray. His breathing was shallow and labored. The machines beeped their steady countdown. I thought I had more time, he whispered when she took his hand. I wanted to see you finish this. You will. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. You'll see them fall. No. He managed a smile. But that's all right. I don't need to see it. I just need to know you'll stand up. His grip tightened with what little strength he had left. Promise me, Magnolia. Promise me you won't let them win. I promise. And promise me something else. His eyes found hers, fierce despite the pain. Don't become like them. Don't let revenge hollow you out. When it's over, when they've paid, you walk away. You build something good. You become the woman your mother would have been proud of. Tears blurred her vision. I will. Good. Elijah closed his eyes. Now go. You have a shareholders' meeting to prepare for. She didn't want to leave, but Mohis gently pulled her away, and she understood. Her father was giving her permission to let go, not of him, but of her grief, at least until the job was done. The meeting was in 72 hours. Magnolia had 72 hours to destroy the people who had destroyed her, and then she would mourn, then she would heal, then she would become whoever she was meant to be. But first, she would make Rachel Harrison kneel. The Harrison Holdings shareholders meeting was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Four Seasons because Rachel Harrison would rather die than admit her empire was crumbling. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, champagne flowing like water. It looked almost identical to the Christmas party 4 weeks earlier, except this time, the cameras belonged to financial journalists, not society photographers. And this time, Magnolia wasn't the victim. She arrived as Mia Laurent, dressed in a cream-colored Chanel suit that cost more than her entire wardrobe had been worth during her marriage. Mohis had insisted on it. "When you take everything from them," he had said, "you should look like you already own it." Rachel spotted her immediately and swept over with the desperate energy of a drowning woman reaching for a life raft. "Miss Laurent, I'm so pleased you could join us. I trust you've had time to review the final investment terms?" Magnolia smiled. "I have. Very illuminating." The meeting proceeded according to script. Richard Harrison gave a presentation filled with optimistic projections and creative accounting. Rachel worked the room, reassuring nervous investors that Harrison Holdings was merely experiencing temporary market adjustments. Lucas sat in the front row, silent, his eyes fixed on something no one else could see. He looked terrible. Magnolia noticed that immediately. His suit hung loose on his frame as if he'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes, a tremor in his hands when he reached for his water glass. Whatever guilt he carried, it was eating him alive. Good, she thought. Then, immediately, no, don't become like them. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. She pushed the thought away. There would be time for mercy later. Right now, she had a job to do. At 2:15, Rachel took the stage for her closing remarks. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to announce that Harrison Holdings has secured a major investment that will ensure our continued growth and prosperity. Miss Mia Laurent, representing Crown Capital, has agreed to inject $50 million into our company." Applause rippled through the room. Rachel beamed. Richard looked like he might cry with relief. Magnolia rose from her seat. "Actually," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom, "I'd like to make the announcement myself, if you don't mind." Rachel's smile flickered, but she stepped aside. "Of course. Please." Magnolia walked to the stage. She could feel every eye in the room on her, the cameras, the investors, the journalists. Lucas, finally looking up, confusion creasing his brow. She reached the microphone, took a breath, and began. "My name is not Mia Laurent." The room went still. "My name is Magnolia Crown. Some of you might remember me by my married name, Magnolia Harrison." She watched the blood drain from Rachel's face. "The woman you threw out of your Christmas party 4 weeks ago. The woman you called a gold digger, a nobody, a stain on your precious family name." Whispers erupted. Cameras flashed. Rachel took a step backward, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. But that's not the interesting part. Magnolia pulled a folder from her bag, the same folder Mohis had given her, now thick with additional documentation. "The interesting part is what I found when I started looking into why your family was so eager to marry me. An orphan, a woman with no connections, no family, no one who would ask questions." She held up the first document. "This is a wire transfer for $2 million dated 18 months into my marriage. It bears my signature. I was supposedly in Baltimore when I signed it." She held up a second document. "This is my passport, showing I was in Toronto that week, visiting a friend. I never signed this document. Someone forged my name." The whispers became a roar. Rachel lunged toward her, but security, Crown security, positioned throughout the room, stepped in to block her path. "There are 47 documents like this," Magnolia continued. "Fraudulent transfers, fake investment agreements, tax filings with forged signatures, all designed to make me the legal fall guy when Harrison Holdings finally collapsed under the weight of its own crimes." She turned to look directly at Rachel, the woman who had called her a virus, who had orchestrated her humiliation in front of hundreds of people, who had tried to destroy her life and steal her future. "You picked me because you thought I was nothing," Magnolia said. "No family, No power, no one who would fight for me. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. You were wrong. The doors burst open. Federal agents in blue windbreakers streamed into the ballroom, followed by local police. The lead agent approached the stage with a warrant in hand. Rachel Harrison, Richard Harrison, you are under arrest for wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. Rachel screamed something incoherent as they put her in handcuffs. Richard went quietly, his face gray, his shoulders slumped. Catherine, who had been sitting near the back, tried to slip out a side door but was intercepted by two agents. The investors fled like rats from a sinking ship, already calculating how to distance themselves from the scandal. And Lucas sat frozen in his chair, watching his entire world collapse. Magnolia stepped down from the stage and walked toward him. The agents had cleared a path without being asked. Mois's doing, probably. She stopped in front of her ex-husband and waited until he finally met her eyes. Magnolia, his voice cracked on her name. I didn't know about all of it, I swear. But you knew some of it. It wasn't a question. He couldn't deny it. She could see the truth written in every line of his face. He had known enough. He had suspected more. And he had chosen silence because silence was easier than courage. The agents aren't arresting you, she said. Your mother made sure you never signed anything directly. She protected you while she set me up. Magnolia watched him flinch at the words. You're not going to prison, Lucas, but you'll have to live with knowing what you allowed to happen. What you could have stopped if you'd had the courage to speak up. I loved you, he whispered. In the beginning, I really did love you. I know. And she did know. That was the worst part. The love had been real once, but love without courage was just another form of cruelty. That's what makes it so sad. You had something worth fighting for, and you threw it away because your mother told you to. Tears streamed down his face. He looked like a child, lost, broken, desperate for someone to tell him it would be okay. But Magnolia was done telling him comfortable lies. I don't hate you, she said. I want you to know that. I think hate would be easier, actually. But I don't hate you. I just feel sorry for you. She turned to leave, then stopped. Everything else, the money, the status, the life you thought you deserved, that's gone. And you're going to have to figure out who you are without it. She walked away before he could respond. There was nothing left to say. Mohis was waiting for her outside, his face grave. She knew before he spoke. She had known somehow from the moment she stepped onto that stage. Some part of her had felt the exact second her father left this world. When? She asked. 2:17, just as you were making your announcement. Mohis's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. He was watching the live stream. He saw you stand up. He saw you begin to speak. And then he took a breath. The nurses said he smiled, and then he was gone. Magnolia didn't cry. Not yet. The tears were there, pressing against her chest like a physical weight, but she couldn't let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the cameras that were still flashing, the journalists who were already shouting questions. Take me to him, she said. The drive to the hospital took 20 minutes. Mohis had arranged for a private entrance, away from the chaos. By the time Magnolia reached her father's room, someone had already removed the medical equipment. He looked peaceful now, smaller somehow, as if death had diminished him. She sat beside his bed and took his hand. It was still warm. I did it, she whispered. I stood up, just like you asked. Mohis appeared in the doorway. He left this for you. He placed an envelope on the bedside table. He wrote it 3 days ago when he knew he wouldn't make it to the meeting. Magnolia opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in her father's elegant script. My dearest daughter, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you are free. Free from me. from your past, from the people who tried to break you. I wish I had more time. I wish I could have watched you grow into the woman I always knew you would become. But some wishes aren't meant to be granted, and perhaps that's for the best. You don't need me anymore, Magnolia. You never really did. I don't need to see them fall. I don't need to watch them pay for what they did. The only victory I ever needed was knowing that you stood up, that you refused to be broken, that you looked your demons in the eye and made them blink first. You are my daughter. You are your mother's daughter. And you are so much more than any of us ever dreamed. Build something good now. Help the children who were forgotten, the way you were forgotten. Be the family that others never had. And when the world tries to tell you that you're not enough, when the Rachels of the world try to make you feel small, remember who you are. You are Magnolia Crown, and you have always been enough. I love you. I have loved you since before you were born, and I will love you long after I'm gone. Your father, Elijah. The tears came then. Magnolia pressed the letter to her chest and wept. For the father she had barely known, for the mother she would never meet, for the 28 years that had been stolen from all of them. She wept until there was nothing left, until the grief had emptied her out and made room for something else. Peace. 6 months later, Magnolia stood at her father's grave in Crown Hill Cemetery, a private plot overlooking the Baltimore harbor. The headstone was simple, just his name, his dates, and a single line she had chosen herself. He never stopped searching. So much had changed since that day at the shareholders' meeting. Rachel Harrison was serving 15 years in federal prison. Richard had received 10. Catherine had tried to flee to Europe, but was arrested at the airport. She was now awaiting trial on money laundering charges. Harrison Holdings had been dismantled, its assets seized, its name erased from Baltimore's skyline. And Lucas? Lucas lived in a small apartment in Fells Point now, working as an accountant for a nonprofit. Magnolia had seen him once, from across a coffee shop, and he had looked almost peaceful, smaller, certainly, quieter, but not destroyed. She hoped in time he might find the courage he had always lacked. She hoped he might become someone worth being. As for Magnolia herself, she had become the sole heir to the Crown Empire, one of the largest fortunes in America. But money meant nothing without purpose, and purpose was something her father had given her in abundance. The Elijah Crown Foundation had opened its doors 3 months ago. It funded orphanages, sponsored scholarships for underprivileged youth, and provided resources for Black women in business. Every dollar Magnolia spent, she spent in her father's name. She placed a single white rose on the grave and touched the cool marble. The half-moon pendant hung at her throat, where it had always hung, where it would always hang until the day she died. I kept my promises, she said softly. Both of them. I didn't let them win, and I didn't become like them. A spring breeze stirred her hair. Somewhere in the harbor, a ship's horn sounded. Life continued as it always did, indifferent to grief and triumph alike. Magnolia turned and walked away from the grave. Her back was straight, her head was high, and behind her, stretching across the grass, her shadow carried a darkness that would never fully fade, the scar of everything she had lost, everything she had survived, everything she had become. But she didn't look back. She had learned, finally, that looking back was a luxury she couldn't afford. The only direction that mattered now was forward, into the light. Into the life she had built from the wreckage of the one they had tried to destroy. They didn't break her, because she was never weak. They just never knew who she really was. And some victories, she had learned, come with a price you can never name, but you pay it anyway. You pay it, and you keep walking, and you build something beautiful from the ashes. That was the only revenge that mattered.